BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook. BasuandGodin Notebook.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Basu and Godin Notebook on Friday, December 12th. I'm at Marc-Antoine Godin in the vicinity of New York City with Arpin Basu in the vicinity of his home.
Yes, I am in my home. Had some FOMO yesterday. I was originally supposed to be in Pittsburgh,
Yes.
and various reasons why I wasn't there. But then when the Fowler call up happened and it became evident that he was going to play his NHL debut, I was actually looking at flights to go. I think it was that significant. And the funny thing is that the Canadiens went to great lengths to reduce the amount of pressure on Jacob Fowler on Wednesday. He was at practice. He was sitting in the dressing room while all the media were in there, and they had posted someone in front of him to make sure no one talked to him because we were told that he would not talk. And what's funny about it is that
Did he do something wrong?
He did not do anything wrong. He did nothing wrong. He did everything right. And honestly, like, what would it hurt to have your fans get to see him, a smiling Jacob Fowler, realizing his lifelong dream, being so happy to be there, etc. But the beauty of it for him is that he went out in Pittsburgh. Everyone knows about the legends, the Canadiens legends who made their debut in Pittsburgh. And then put up an incredible performance. So basically, heaped this pressure on himself with the not only the performance he had, but the impact he had on the team in front of him. And I thought it was really telling to hear him say afterwards. He was I think it was in the RDS interview where he mentioned. The Canadiens, when he was asked, like, were you surprised you were called up? He's like, well, yes and no. The Canadiens were basically paraphrasing, but like, we're struggling. They needed a win, and so I wanted to come here and be able to provide that. Like, I mean, that to me is like a 21-year-old, and he knew that heading into that game, and then did what he did in that game. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because I bumped into Peter Budaj last night. He says, "Hey, how come you're not in Pittsburgh to see the new savior?"
The next one, yes.
Here's a man who spent a few years in Montreal.
Here's a man.
He knows the drill.
He knows about saviors. He was one of that savior's favorite backups, basically, because he's such a good guy.
Yeah, he was. So, but you're right. I mean, Fowler, because listen, in today's episode, we're going to go back, maybe take the week as a whole, but we have to start with last night's game, and Fowler did everything he had to do, and then some. To me, we can discuss the risks that are linked to him being called up, but in the here and now, the Canadiens needed a win. They needed saves, and they probably needed also to calm down as a group. It's a lot to ask from a rookie 21-year-old goaltender who's entering the league to be a calming factor to a group. But honestly, you look at the way that Fowler played last night, and his game management suggested that there was a lot of calm in his game. You look just by the way that he moved in his net, how confident and assured he was. His rebound control was excellent. I mean, he absorbed a lot of pucks. He would put rebounds where he wanted them, out of the slot more often than not. In a few occasions where it ended up in front of him, he was repositioning himself for a second shot based on the angle of where his rebound went, so he would beat that second shot. And overall,
the one rebound he put in the slot wound up being like basically a third assist.
Yeah.
He put a rebound right onto Slavkovsky's stick, and it turned into Brendan Gallagher's 2-0 goal. So I mean,
It
yeah.
it almost looked intentional. Like let's
Almost. I mean, I went back and looked at it, and I was like, did he do that on I don't think he did. I mean, honestly, like I can't
yeah.
imagine. But it stood out because he hadn't been doing that, and the one time he does, so it made me wonder. I was like, did he do that on purpose? Because he hadn't done that the whole game, and that had been really obviously this is a big issue with Sam, less so with Dobesh, but the rebound control thing and just being able to absorb pucks. But I just found it funny that the one time he did give up a rebound, it turned into basically a third assist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so overall, I think that the what was needed for the group, because I think that the one aspect that we are missing and being outside of the team is something that we cannot have a proper finger on the pulse is to which extent the players have confidence in the goalie that's behind them. It would be easy to say, they've lost confidence in both of their goalies, or they don't play in front of Sam anymore, or whatever. We can speculate all we want, but I think that it's when you have a goalie who's exuding confidence and calmness, it makes it a lot easier for the rest of the team to play their own game, focus on what they've got to do. And there seemed to be very early in the game a trust factor that was being established. And it was not necessarily because of Fowler doing a whole lot of stuff, because his first shot came halfway in the first period. So I think that there was the proper short-term effect of calling him up. The jolt that it provided the whole team was what was intended. But does it remain big picture for a team that always says we're looking at being good long term, that we're not coaching the guy today as much as we're coaching for the guy that he's going to be tomorrow, all that stuff? I mean, I'm sorry to go big picture right away, Arpin, but is this the right play long term?
Well, I used this Mike Tyson quote in my piece Tuesday night, which we'll get to Tuesday night and Wednesday and everything, the whole run up to this. But Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and it's fine for the Canadiens to sit there and say that, oh, the plan was always to bring up Jacob Fowler. That might very well be true. I have no doubt it is true that when Marty said over and over again, I would have been shocked if he didn't get a game in the NHL this year. You cannot have me believe that the plan was to bring up Jacob Fowler when your goaltending was a total disaster and you had the worst save percentage in the NHL, and you were losing games by huge blowout scores, in part because of the goaltending, at least in part. No, this was not the plan. This was not the plan, and for the Canadiens to have to be like, he's not a savior. This is not a desperation move. Like, these are not the kinds of questions you want to be fielding when you're calling up your young prized goaltending prospect. It should just be, in an ideal world, would be, well, everything's going well right now. Why do this now? Like, why? Everything's great. Why are you bringing him up in this time? Like, it would be perfect for him to come up at a period when the goaltending was actually good, and that this is just a way to get them some rest, and the team's playing well in front of those goalies, and so you have confidence that he's not going to be shelled and peppered with shots and everything. And so, this was not part of the plan. But big picture, it's important for this team to make the playoffs, right? And they're not going to miss the playoffs necessarily right now, but the way things were going with both their goalies, it was impacting the whole team. And you say, and I think you're right to say that it would be speculative, but to say that they didn't have confidence in front of their other goalies, or they played differently. But I think last night we saw, in part, that they do play differently, and they do kind of lack confidence playing in front of them, because, and it wasn't early in the game. I think the fact that the Canadiens played such a good first period, that had everything to do with the changes Mark St. Louis made to his lineup, B, the emphasis that's been placed repeatedly since Saturday, really, on some of the defensive elements, D zone structure, forecheck, neutral zone, all that stuff. But in the second period, once the Canadiens had gone up 3-0 after that Cole Caulfield goal, and they started turning pucks over in the neutral zone, they started feeding the Penguins offense, all the things that Martin St. Louis says not to do. Once they started doing that, and the puck, and they're starting to leak shots and chances and this and that, and the puck still didn't wind up in their net, and they still had a 3-0 lead, that's when you saw the impact on the team's confidence, because it's tough. It's tough when you know that you're not going to get a save, and so you have no margin for error defensively, and that is, I can't help but feel how the Canadiens felt on some nights, because Sam Montembeault has given up the first shot he's seen 5 times this season, 5 goals on the first shot he's seen. Because Dobeš is kind of the anti-Fowler in the sense that he's sliding all over the place, and he gives off the opposite vibe to Fowler. Dobeš is effective, and he can play great games, but are you sure he's going to play a great game when you're watching him in his crease and he's sliding way past his post? He's almost below the goal line at times. It's not a goalie that exudes confidence, and that's his style. And that's what's got him here. And so you can't knock him for it, but it's not a style that lends itself to consistency, right? And the way we watched Fowler play last night, he does play a style that lends itself to consistency. I don't want to heap this pressure on him, but it was very reminiscent of the last young Canadiens goalie to make his NHL debut at Pittsburgh. It was. That glove save he made on the deflection in the second period, and the glove save he made on Sidney Crosby in the last 2 minutes were both efficient, no wasted movement, no exuberance, no flash. Just the puck's deflected right in front of me. I'm just gonna flip my glove out, catch it, no rebound, all good.
Yeah.
And I think that more than anything else is what the Canadiens needed, is that they needed to feel that sense that this guy's got things under control, and he exuded that.
So
from opening puck drop.
So in recent years, let's say in the last 10 years, there's 2 goalies who got a good chunks of games in the NHL at age 20. Those are Spencer Knight and Carter Hart. At 21, you had a few guys also, Jussi Saros, Nico Dawes, who since returned to the American League. But other than these 4 in the last decade, the 20 and 21-year-old goalies have had spot starts here and there, 5-6 games, whatever. But this is a very, very young age to enter the league. So do you see Fowler at this point in his career as a stopgap, just to help stop the bleeding, making sure that the rest of the group finds its rhythm and basically doesn't have to just depend on the goalie making the big save, and that players are more comfortable applying their structure consistently? Or instead of being just a temporary measure, they could ride him as long as need be, and as long as he can provide the sort of goaltending that they got from him yesterday in Pittsburgh. Because it's a double-edged sword.
Well, this is what becomes the delicate part of this, right? It is, if we're projecting forward, Jacob Fowler made it so it's almost impossible for Marty to not start him tomorrow night in New York. One of the other goalies is probably going to have to start, and really should start, Sunday at home against the high-powered Edmonton Oilers. And honestly, what's really worth wondering is, do you sit Fowler on Saturday and save him for Sunday at the Bell Center against Edmonton? But I think the more you start to lean on Fowler, the more you are treading into a direction where this can become negative, right? Right now, it couldn't be more positive. He was called up. He got his NHL debut. He was outstanding. He got the win. First star of the game, everything. And really had a tangible impact on his team and his teammates. If you start riding him hard, that risks changing. And frankly, this coach and this administration have an example sitting right in front of them from last season. Now they never rode Dobeš particularly hard, but as he continued piling up wins, I think Alex Carrier said before the game, he's like, I don't think I've ever played in front of a goalie making his NHL debut before. I was like, pretty sure you did last year. Like it's been a little less than a year since you did that, but anyhow, there will be some kind of a dip, and it's not even necessarily a dip. At some point, he's going to face some, for instance, Sunday Edmonton. Like it might not go as well when you're facing, two of the best players in the world, and it's just a different dynamic. Not to say Pittsburgh has no firepower, if they clearly do, but best power play in the NHL, and the Canadiens kept taking penalties, so it's you got to test there. But if you start riding him, you don't want to deviate from the plan too much, right? It's okay that circumstances. This was, as you like to say, in case of emergency break glass. Like this is what that was. How they manage it and how they handle it is going to be very interesting to me, because you do have the two other goalies. I'd be interested to see Dobeš benefiting from the type of reset breaks that Sam Montembeault has benefited from this season. He hasn't really had that because Sam has struggled so much. And so what can a few days of practice and just working on things do for Jakub Dobeš? I would not be shocked if those two guys were on the ice today in New York, even though the Canadiens officially don't have practice, but they did have ice time booked in New York.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if those guys were on the ice. So to me, big picture, no, ideally you wouldn't have Jacob Fowler become the number one goalie from this point onward and play a typical number one goalie workload. In an ideal world, your two other goalies look at this as a threat and respond in kind and clean up the things they need cleaning up, and take the job back. And eventually Jacob Fowler can help lead Laval on a long run in the Calder Cup playoffs and have a positive experience down there. But on the other hand, if there is an argument to be made that until he proves otherwise, that they shouldn't worry about that. And for now, I think that's probably the case, is that they're going to be like, well, this kid is coming at an opportune time. They saw the benefit of what that can do. This is right around the time Patrick Laine. It is just after the time Patrick Laine showed up last year for the first time and gave the team a jolt. We're almost at the point where Alex Carrier showed up last year and gave the team a jolt. Like, this is the time of year. And Marty said it after the game. This is where the normalcy sets in. And he liked the urgency of the game last night, and that urgency was jolted by the fact that they had a 21-year-old. He just turned 21 a couple of weeks ago, but a goalie in his 20-year-old season making his NHL debut behind them, and the defensive urgency was quite clear. It was heightened. It was higher, and the goalie eventually rewarded them for it when their urgency, inevitably dipped halfway through the second period.
I love the urgency from the forecheck standpoint. I think that the Canadiens established their forecheck early on in the game in a way that they've rarely done. To that extent so far this year, they were all over the Penguins and playing on top of them and just, taking away their time and space in brilliant fashion early on. But the thing is, it's when you talk about it. A dip that's inevitable might not be necessarily Fowler's play, but what we've seen from the Canadiens since the beginning of November is that they can string 2 or 3 good defensive performances, and then they'll fall off a cliff on any given night. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I'm concerned with, is if they put Fowler in net, and the ground doesn't fall off their feet, and they stop, leaking goals and going into these being pummeled by giving up 6, 7, 8 goals. If that ceases to happen, you can make a correlation between Fowler's arrival and the fact that they're not being blown out anymore. But defensively, the fact that they haven't been able to hold on to their structure for a significant period of time over the last maybe month and a half, it might come back to haunt them, and that's where if this happens, Fowler is going to be exposed to that, and that's where my whole hesitation is. You referred to Dobesh being called up last year. It's true that Dobesh being called up helped reignite or refocus the Canadian season along with Carrier and Laine. That's true. But when the big difference is that when Dobesh arrived, he was replacing an ineffective goaltender in Caden Primo, but Samuel Montembeault was playing rather well. And Dobesh was called up after Montembeault played 3 games in 4 nights just before Christmas. And now Fowler arrives just after Dobesh has started 3 games in 4 nights. But the big difference is this year, both goaltenders are struggling. It's not just one, and you got a rookie coming in to replace another young goalie and hopes to be a more effective backup to the number one goalie. Now you got 2 goalies who are looking for their game. I thought that Dobesh at some point was finally out of the woods, but maybe that they've been just asking a bit too much out of him,
I think
just
that's
because
it.
the fact that he's a rookie, and what did you expect?
Yeah, no, the root of all of this is Montembeault. Like the root of the fact that he's not playable right now, and that's what it's become. And I think you mentioned it a while ago that he looks not playable, and it's like he's flat out not playable. I mean, what happened against Tampa, particularly, which was the ideal scenario for Sam to come in. You're down 3-0. Just hold the fort. Just give your guys a chance. But like, there's not the pressure of the world is not on you. This game, for all intents and purposes, is lost. You're probably not coming back against this team, even though Victor Hedman didn't finish that game, even though that team has, has gone through so many injury issues. But that's a veteran team that knows how to close out a game and knows how to bring a 3-goal lead to the finish line. So just use this as a test. Let's give my team a chance to come back. And he did the opposite of that. Obviously gives up a goal on the first shot, gives up a goal from a terrible angle to Radish, which you could say that was a great shot, but that can't go in. Radish's second goal from the blue line, no screen, no tip, no nothing, can't go in. And that's a goal that obviously has always been an issue with Sam Montembeault, is shots like that, wrist shots from the blue line from distance. And so that's an important distinction, is that last year the problem was the backup. This year the problem is the supposed starter, and that has a trickle down. Is Dobesh supposed to be playing as much as he is right now? Probably not. And so when you mention him playing 3 games in 4 nights, that's, I think, the way that game went. And frankly, should he have stopped Braden Point's shot after he dummied Jaden Struble and got in alone on goal? Sure, that would have been nice, but that's Braden Point. That's a world-class player in alone on your goalie, and then you give up a breakaway off a power play. So that's your first 2 goals allowed are off grade A plus chances. And so, and when you're playing your 3rd game in 4 nights, and to be fair, this situation was created by a sudden illness from Sam Montembeault. And so, but yeah, when you're playing your 3rd, like, there was nothing preventing Sam from starting that game, and they still went with Dobesh. And so this is the underlying thing, is that it was always going to be unlikely, and I've said it how many times on the podcast, where how many teams ride a rookie goalie to the playoffs and make it far in the playoffs on a rookie goalie? I've said it a million times, how they need Sam Montembeault to find his game. Now that question is
Which rookie?
It's twice as pertinent. Yeah, that's it. It's twice as relevant. Can you ride two rookie goalies? And what do you do with Sam? Like Sam, I don't know I don't know the path to Sam becoming the goalie that we were used to seeing from him. Like he just seems so destroyed. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he's had ample time to work on things. At a certain point, what does Marty always say? The league keeps going, right? And
Yeah.
This league in particular, this year in particular, it's going at a ridiculous rate. Like you can't. If you take a week off right now, if the Canadiens give a goalie a week off, he's missing 4 games right now in their schedule. So it's like the way the schedule is set up, you don't have interminable amounts of time to find your game again. And maybe Fowler allows Dobesh that time. Maybe Fowler allows Dobesh to get a reset here, and maybe he responds to it, because Sam has not. He's had 2, if not 3 reset periods this season, and it still hasn't had an impact on his game. So I think they need to keep Fowler until one of the 2 goalies shows that he's ready to take on the bulk of the work. And then, in an ideal world, the 2 other goalies do figure out their games, and then they can send Fowler back and say, that was a good experience. And if we need you, we know we have you down there, but go down and continue your success in Laval and continue helping that team have just a good development environment for all the young talent we have down there.
But you said it earlier, though. The Canadiens need to make the playoffs, or they want to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know to which extent they need to make the playoffs. I think they could allow themselves to have, a bit of a step back if it means going ahead, and being stronger for years after. But it all depends, because on the one hand, you feel the urgency of them getting points and finding their game and just staying afloat, at least in the standings. But this is not the year where they're meant to win the Stanley Cup either. So you just don't want to burn the kid. That's all I'm saying, and it might work out well. It might. Who knows? It'd be a great story.
It might. Yeah.
But it's you're not supposed to count on this.
Well, you're not supposed to have your goalie completely lose all semblance of knowledge and skill and ability to be a goalie. Like that's you can't plan for that. Like you cannot plan for a goalie completely losing it. And that's what the Canadiens are dealing with right now. And so they're lucky that they do have this option. Like it's not as if there was a goalie available on the trade market, the Edmonton Oilers would have made that trade a long time ago. Like if there was the goalie that was seemingly available on the trade market played against the Canadiens last night, and he's been good. Like he's the ultimate hot or cold goalie, but he's had a good season, and he's a big part of why Pittsburgh's had a much better than expected season. Like he's been okay this year. He's been more than okay. I mean, so there's no goalie out there to go get, and the Canadiens had a goalie who was performing extremely well in the AHL. They could have called up Kekkonen, but Kekkonen has not been good of late. He wouldn't have provided the same jolt. I don't think the Canadiens would have been as excited to play in front of Capo Kekkonen than they were to play in front of Jacob Fowler and to make sure that his first game went well. So yeah, I think again, the Montembeault thing has punched this franchise in the mouth in the short term, at least, in the sense that what looked like a very solid position for this club, not elite, but solid, or at least at least average, minimum,
Deep.
but probably above average.
Yeah.
Well, just having 2 goalies that could share the load and play well, and have a veteran kind of shoulder more of it because the other guys are rookie. Anyhow, they seem well positioned at this position, and they're not. Not only are they not well positioned, they're the worst positioned team in the league in the sense that they're the worst. They have the worst goaltending in the league right now, and so it's when that happens, you gotta roll with the punches and go with it. And so I don't know if they're going to overthink this thing on Jacob Fowler and if they're going to worry about burning him or whatever, like the way that um, perhaps they should. But it does seem to be keep it short term this season. You know, like the games are so fast and furious that if they're going to if they look at this game tomorrow in New York and say who gives us the best chance to win that game, and they base the decision solely on that, then there's no doubt Jacob Fowler is going to start that game,
For sure.
like undoubtedly.
Yeah.
But if they start worrying about development paths and this and that, then yeah, maybe they. And I honestly don't see them doing that. I really think they're going to make a decision that allows them the best chance to win that game, and then they'll deal with Sunday when Sunday gets here.
So a big talking point throughout the week was the home and away discrepancy. And it's been so significant, especially when you just look at the save percentage. I mean, team wise, on the road, the Canadiens have an 898 save percentage, which is not great, but it's okay league wide. This is average. But at home, they're last, way last at 849. So this is and it seems as though their problems for both Dobesh and Montembeault were double or increased in the last few weeks. Do you have any beginning of thesis as to why that is? Because honestly, all this stuff about the Bell Center is a welcoming place to play, and visitors are happy to come, and they're motivated by playing at the Bell Center because it's a great atmosphere, but it's not necessarily intimidating for other teams. I mean, this is not new. This has always been like that.
That's it.
And there's been years where the Canadiens were very good at home, but you look at the goalies' performances. You look also at the difference in the quality of the power play. The Canadiens' power play has been average, I think 16th in the league at home, but they're among the best on the road, though. And you can tell that when they're comfortable and not overthinking it on the road, their power play has the potential to be really crushing for the other team. So those are two factors where you can tell that there's a significant home and away split. But the real reason behind it, is it just the mindset? Is it just the youth of the team? Is it the mindset of the goalies, or is it something else entirely?
I'm not going to lie, Marc Antoine. I never buy the whole home road thing. I understand it's a factor. There are tactical differences between playing at home and on the road, but I never dive too deeply into it because I don't think the players or the coaches think that way. They don't go on the road and say we're going to play one way and then come home and say we're going to play another way. Like it's undeniably a thing. There's no way around that. It's for sure a thing. But you mentioned the save percentage like that. I would be tempted to say that that's the number one reason for it. Like I just feel like everything kind of flows from that. If they get a big save early in a game, the team plays with the confidence that they don't otherwise have. Just feeling, anyone who's ever played a hockey game at any level, when you kind of go into the game knowing that you have the second best goalie, it has an impact on you. It does. It just feels like you don't have margin for error. And so, but in terms of finding a reason for that, I don't think it serves anyone's purposes because nobody knows. They don't know. We don't know. And it's just something they need to fix. But I do think last night we shouldn't only focus on the goal. Well, actually, speaking of home road, so that game happens on Tuesday. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That game happens on Tuesday, home game, get blown out again. It's the fourth or fifth time they've been blown out this season at home. Fourth, I think. Dallas, LA, Washington, Tampa. Washington and Tampa, they were both on the back-to-back, and the Canadiens were rested for both those games. So doubly bad. Obviously, the Canadiens call up Fowler, Engstrom, and Beck after the game, immediately after the game, just after we had finished speaking to Martin St. Louis.
They called
And
them up.
so,
They called them up while there was still like 5 minutes to play in the game. So it was really a
well,
late.
they called Owen Beck said he got the call at like 9 p.m. So there were more than 5 minutes
Oh,
left in the game.
okay.
9 p.m. somewhere around there. So the game was over ostensibly, but not technically over. Far from it.
Hmm.
He's the only one who I got a timing from, but yeah, he said he got the call around 9 p.m. So I think he estimated there was like 10 minutes left in the game. They had to have known whatever Jake Evans is dealing with on a personal issue was pre-planned. It just seemed like he had something, whatever it was, he had something, because the fact that he's joining the team in New York today would suggest that this was something that did not come out of nowhere. And I think the timing of the Beck call up probably reinforces that. So, yeah. So, but the point being is that you have this game where, and I think I should kind of explain why, like, I had the dust up everyone was talking about with Marty the next day. But so after the game,
Oh yeah.
I go up to Nick Suzuki after the game, and we're talking about just the 2 goals that they gave up in the first period, and he said, well, the question I asked was, you come out, you get the first 4 or 5 scoring chances of the game, they get one, they score, and I didn't even ask a question. He just said, yeah, it's deflating. And I was like, okay, well, even after that breakaway goal, it's 2-0. It's the first period. Like, why why is it that deflating? Like, why is it's 2-0. You can still get back in a game with that's 2-0 in the first period. You guys have done it multiple times in the beginning of the year. Like, it wasn't an issue. And that's when he kind of mentioned that, I think this is where the youth comes in, and we're a lot younger than we were to start the season. And this is where it's difficult. It's difficult with such a young team to not get deflated when you fall down 2-0 to a good team. Like, it's tough. And I was like, okay, well, that's fair. That's fine. But then that was why I asked Marty the next day, and then he didn't like the question and whatever. It really wasn't that big of a deal. And I think it was more made of it than should have been, but
Definitely.
yeah. So, I mean, that's the reason for that question is the team's captain is pinning the fact that the team fell apart when down 2-0 on the youth of the team. But I think an argument can be made is that, and in that situation, it's not that it was Dobesh's fault, but the third goal goes in, obviously, and then he comes out of the net, and then Sam, what happens. But what was interesting last night is, so first of all, the youth comes in, Engstrom comes in for Jacky again. Another thing that was kind of blown out of proportion was that it didn't replace Struble, and frankly, Struble again made 2 or 3 really bad plays in that game, and I would not be shocked if he was out for Jacky tomorrow.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me. But the interesting part of it is how it reconfigured the entire defense pairs, and I thought it was fascinating because not only did Slavkovsky go back to the Kapanen and Demidov line, and you had Bolduc, who I feel is, square peg round hole with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. You had Bolduc playing there, and it was fine. It was, it was fine. He was better than he'd been previously, but it was fine.
Well, Cole was really the dynamo on that line.
Yeah, he was 100%. And I still continue to think that Bolduc's not a good fit there. And it's really become evident that whichever of the 2 lines Slavkovsky is on is going to be the better of the 2 lines. And it wasn't necessarily the case last night, but there was a dynamic element to it. So anyhow, but the interesting part of it was on the back end, you had Matheson and Carrier, Hudson, Dobson, and Struble, Engstrom on the right. But the thing that I found interesting is that Matheson, Carrier were playing behind the Suzuki line more often, way more often, quite regularly. They were deployed with Nick Suzuki, and Hudson and Dobson were deployed with Kapanen. And it's no coincidence that we saw perhaps Hudson's most dominant game of the year. Like, it's the first time all year, basically, that he's played with a partner of Dobson's caliber. It's no coincidence. I think we saw a very, very improved version of Alex Carrier because he was back with the partner with whom he played for much of last season, but they were also playing behind their top line. And so the real adjustment, like Hudson's been playing away from Suzuki more or less all season. Like it's not been the line he plays behind that often. This was Dobson's first chance to do that, but I think like it's a different way to balance your talent. You know, we always look at the forwards and say like, how are you going to organize your forwards? How are you going to balance it out? I think the way the defense was deployed behind the forwards was an interesting way to further balance your talent. Like it allowed Carrier to be effective,
Yeah,
basically,
I agree.
and made him into more of sort of the type of defenseman that they need than playing with Jack Hyatt.
Well,
That's and
when you want to get out of a funk, you need your best players to be your best players. And when the way that the D was managed yesterday, they, they clearly there was a top four that was identified, and Carrier, for all the struggles that he's had so far this season, is viewed under the circumstances as a top four, and they were deployed accordingly. So there was just crumbles left for Angstrom and Struble. Angstrom played 11:30. Struble's played under. He played 13:20. So it was really, the minutes were even more loaded towards the top four than they would be under a normal game. And I mean, usually the top two pairings have had the bulk of the work significantly, but it felt even more tilted last night. And I agree with you. Having a duo where it's clearly more offensive and another one that's clearly more defensive. Well, it's, on the one hand, it's a gutsy move because you don't have last change, but Matheson and Carrier managed to, to do the job defensively that they were meant to do. And Hudson was so dominant, so all over the ice, that if they could manage to remain effective, those duos in New York on Saturday, I feel as though it's a top six that's even more promising in home games where you do have the last change, and you can really maximize what you got out of that top six. But when you look at the way that the Pittsburgh Penguins are playing, I think that they're the team with the least number of hits in the NHL. They're not a tough team. The choice of scratching Jacky and entering Engstrom, I think it had to do also with the type of opponent that they were facing. But it was even more, before you get to toughness on your back end. It's who's going to help us, making sure that we spend as little time as possible in our end, and who can help us get the puck out. And that's where Engstrom can showcase himself and say, you know what, I might be not the biggest guy, not the toughest guy, but I will contribute in making sure that the puck gets out. And in his limited role, that's what he did.
Yeah, he's much more comfortable carrying the puck than his previous games, and we saw flashes of what makes him so effective in Laval. But one thing to keep in mind is that the Penguins are set up in a very similar way to the Jets, right? And so the Jets, in the sense that they have a top line, and then after that, there's a drop off. And if you can neutralize that, especially with no Malkin, actually, particularly with no Malkin, normally they're not set up this way, but the version of the Penguins that they faced last night is that way. And so if you can get the Crosby line somewhat neutralized, which they did, and that was primarily Matheson and Carrier with Suzuki, Caulfield, and Bolduc. And Bolduc had, on the first Penguins goal, again, Bolduc is in the defensive zone, apparently playing a man-to-man and not having a man next to him, and that's an issue. It's really the one tenet of a man-to-man system is that when you're in your defensive zone, the name of the system tells you what you have to do. It's like it really predicates what you're supposed to be doing in the defensive zone. So that remains an issue. But it allowed the way the Penguins are right now with Malkin out, allowed Marty and Stefan Robida to give that mission to Nick Suzuki and Mike Matheson and Alex Carrier. And I'm very curious to see how this will impact Carrier. We've been pretty clear, and I think he has been pretty cognizant and has acknowledged that he has been less than the version of him we saw last season,
Yeah.
and I think a big reason for that is this is what playing with Matheson does to a player. It really is. And he just gets a lot of hard minutes, continues playing well, continues defending well. I think he had a great game last night, and really allowed them to have the benefit of Hudson and Dobson together, which I think is really interesting. And I think I would like to see that pairing get some runway here. They might decide to change them based on the nature of the teams they're facing, but the version of Hudson we've seen this year, having played primarily ever since Gouli went down, but primarily with Jaden Struble, is just further validates his season so far. Like, he's had a great season. He really has. He's not been as perhaps as evidently offensively impactful as often as he was last season, but really the version of him we saw last night when Lane Hudson was on the ice last night, the shots on goal at 5-on-5 were 18-5. Not shot attempts, shots on goal, shots reaching the goaltender. 18-5 is outrageous. Just for a team to have 18 shots on goal when any one player is on the ice at 5-on-5 is outrageous.
Yeah.
It's really ridiculous. And for you to only allow 5 in that time, and to be clear, Hudson was the 5-on-5 ice time leader on the team. Played nearly 16 minutes at 5-on-5. That's incredible. But again, did it against the underbelly of Pittsburgh's lineup. Like, he did it against the second wave, which is obviously not nearly as challenging, but still, for any player in any circumstance to have 18 shots on goal happen in your 5-on-5 minutes is a pretty extraordinary thing.
For sure. When I was talking about your players needing to be your best, Hudson collaborated in a way, because we saw him play a bit of shorthand, because Carrier got two penalties over the course of the evening. Dobson had a penalty too in the game, so Hudson was asked to play a little bit on the PK. Interesting.
Plus, there's no Evans.
Plus, there's no Evans. That's where I was going, because Suzuki, who's usually the fifth forward on the PK, became all of a sudden the most trusted forward on the PK, because we know that he's an excellent penalty killer, but it's just in order to save him, limit his minutes. He has not been asked to do that all that much. So Suzuki ended up being the forward that plays the most 4-on-5. And the fifth forward, who would pitch in once in a while, became Alexandre Texier. So it's interesting, in situations like this, you have a window into the coach's assessments on who can do what. And it was an interesting tidbit to see Texier playing almost 2 minutes on the PK. But Suzuki was, contributed immensely. We talked about Fowler being very good, and yesterday some of his best moments in the game came on the PK. But but as a whole, it's interesting to see Suzuki being asked to do that job in Pittsburgh on a night when Evans is not available.
For sure. And I mean, it's commendable that the Canadiens have resisted the urge to have Suzuki get more time on the penalty kill. It would be so easy to just be like, oh, he's right there. Like, he would be such an upgrade on whoever is out there right now. Kapanen's slowly getting better. Veleno has become an effective penalty killer. I think the Anderson-Evans pairing, Evans is obviously great. I think that pairing, as far as chemistry goes and effectiveness, and particularly pressuring the puck up ice and things, it's still a work in progress. It's not the same as Evans and Armia. Like, it's just not. It's very different, and so they're still working on it, but that's still their top pairing out there for that. I think it shows great discipline, the fact that Suzuki only gets used in situations where Evans takes a penalty, or he's not available, or Valeno gets a penalty, although that rarely happens. But it's to keep him as the fifth guy shows a lot of discipline, and last night, not only did not only was Evans not there, but the Canadiens took, what was it, 6 penalties? I think they had to kill 6 penalties in that game,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. So, and yes, Fowler was great. I mean, Mike Matson played 8:45 on the penalty kill. 8:45. Crazy. It's just crazy. Blocked 5 shots, and then like it's and not a single hit registered. Whether that's accurate or not, I seem to think that he maybe got one here and there, but that's relevant. Is that you can do that with your feet,
That's 8:45 out of 9:48. Overall, they were on the PK for 9 minutes 48.
He played 8:45 of it.
Yeah.
I mean, his value to this team is just like it's bonkers. Like it's every time he plays, it just makes that contract look more and more ridiculous. Like honestly, the contract that he decided to sign is basically a contribution to the Canadiens' like project of trying to win a Stanley Cup, and he wants to be a part of that. And so it's. But I think we saw another great example, like the impact he had on Carrier, the impact he had on the penalty kill. The impact he had on Fowler, frankly, like he just makes his life, the life of a goaltender, easier. And Fowler had to make a number of great saves in that game, especially over the second half. But yeah, I mean, I think the penalty kill. That's the top power play in the league coming in.
Yeah,
and so
they scored every 3 power plays.
Yeah, and the Canadiens decided to test that. Like, oh yeah, you think you're so great? Let's see what you can do here. And defending a 6-on-4 with 5 minutes left, which led to like an interminable shift in their own end. And that's when Fowler made that save on Crosby, that glove save I mentioned, with like Kindle serving as a bit of a screen. 2 minutes left. I think it was 1:45 left to go. The Canadiens had 4 guys who had been on the ice for close to 2 minutes at that point. I think it was Slavkovsky, Matson, Carrier, and Valeno, if I'm not mistaken. And Gallagher was out there, but Gallagher had come out of the box from that 6-on-4 situation and made it into a 6-on-5. But still, the Canadiens were dog tired in a situation where they have not performed particularly well this season, or have had some issues, I should say. And then Fowler makes that save. No rebound, no nothing, glove save, no fanfare, not a huge deal. Didn't look like a big deal. But, for him to say after the game that Crosby and Fleury were his idols growing up, and he's been to games in that building, and Penguins were his favorite team, and there's a picture floating around of him as a kid in a Penguins jersey, for him to have that kind of demeanor in that situation, and really the thing that he did most often that I thought was really mature and needed was he got his team a change when they needed one. Whenever it looked like they were kind of scrambling and they were tired, or the momentum was shifting the other way, he would freeze the puck and he would get a whistle.
I wrote down another occasion where it happened before Galley's goal in the second period, and where he stopped the puck. Another long shift in the defensive zone. He recognizes that. He recognizes the urgency to just stop the play and force a change. And that again, when I mentioned game management early on, there's a lot of understanding and maturity in his game to say you need a certain level of awareness in your first NHL game. Say, oh, okay, that's what's needed now. And he did it on multiple occasions. So that's a detail, but sometimes these little details, and Carey was full of little details that we took for granted and became so obvious once he was gone. But just sometimes little details like that in the game say, okay, it's like Dobesh's quality of puck handling. This is significant. We mentioned it the other night because even though he he was struggling. He was fighting every shot in his direction. The way that he passes the puck and gets out of his net and moves the puck, it's an asset that he has and that Sam doesn't have. But you cannot take it for granted on any goaltender because some have it, some don't. But it's those little tidbits of that position, they all count. And to me,
Yeah.
being able early on in your career to recognize what your team needs in a certain situation, especially in your first start in the NHL, that's commendable.
Yes. No, 100%. Another little, speaking of details, this is pretty remarkable. I don't know if you noticed, but Sidney Crosby won 22 of his 26 faceoffs last night. 13 of 14 in the offensive zone. He went 16-1 against Nick Suzuki.
Yeah.
16-1 against Nick Suzuki. But the funny thing is, so he didn't lose that many. Zach Bolduc took one draw against Sidney Crosby and won as many faceoffs against him than Nick Suzuki did all night.
Okay.
Good for you, Zach Bolduc.
Yeah.
That's good. And I guess it is a way to segue into his situation playing on that line.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dilemma, when you have 4 top 6 forwards, which is what the Canadiens have right now, and you're trying to figure out how to fill those out. Or 5 top 6 forwards, and you're trying to figure out the 6th guy. And so Texier did that for a while, did a fine job. But Bolduc being the 6th guy is obviously the ideal solution. It loads up the top 6 a bit. It takes some of the scoring talent or scoring potential away from the bottom 6. And it was good to get the fact that Gallagher got a goal and Texier got a goal. And this was actual secondary scoring that the Canadiens have not gotten very much of. But Bolduc to me is just kind of an interesting character in this season. It's, I had a chat with him on Friday. It's just so self-aware and is so he's so honest. He really, he can recognize that he has not been able to get into a rhythm this season, that he's been inconsistent. His floor is too low. His bad games are bad. And that's him talking, not me. He basically said, I need to make sure my bad games are not as bad. I need to raise my floor. It's really a priority for him. And so I finally got a chance to ask him what I've been kind of saying for a while with him, is that he needs to be playing on a line that is straight line, north-south, forechecking, this and that. So I was wondering if that's what he had in St. Louis. And, you can look at the line charts, but I mean, really the style of play under Jim Montgomery in particular for him was that north-south straight line. And, he did say that he is a direct player. He is a straight line player. That's how he needs to play. And then I'm like, well, Nick and Cole don't play that way. That is not the way they play. He's like, yeah, well, it's, that's on me to adapt to the way they're playing. I can't expect them to adapt to the way I play. I need to adapt to the way they play. I thought he was fine last night, but again, there's instances where you'd like to see him come out of the corner with a puck, or you'd like to see him get first touch on that F1. Remember when we talked to Jeff Gorton in the summer? What did he say? Their number one thing that they liked about Bolduc was his ability to be F1, the ability to be first on puck, the ability to play with the puck down low, all this stuff that Emil Heineman, who you watched last night, did well. I mean, these are things that he has not particularly done well with the Canadiens. And so it's important on that line for him to own the puck battles down low. He needs to do the things that Slavkovsky does for that line, at least to some extent. He doesn't have to copy Slavkovsky's game, but he needs to do those things. And I don't know. It seems to me very, very similar to when Marty kept trying Josh Anderson on that line, because he just felt like it was it seemed like something that should work. I'll put a physical forechecking guy who can go collect pucks and get it for them. And then they'll Like in theory, it works. In practice, it really did not work. And I'm curious if Bolduc can make it work, then that's a really big impact. That would really make a big impact on the way that the Canadiens could deploy their forwards, especially when Doc comes back. It would give them a lot more depth. It would give them a lot more balance. But I still think it remains to be seen if Bolduc can actually do that. And I think he recognizes that too. Like it's on him to make that work.
Yeah, but when you talk about playing more like Slavkovsky developed that part of his play. That was not something that was on the forefront of his play when he was drafted. They saw the tools of him adding this to his style and adding these elements to his game. But that was not primarily who Slavkovsky was at first. I think that you just have to give Bolduc some time to see if he can morph into that player a little bit more.
But it's
just that before you start comparing him to Josh Anderson, who arrived in Montreal almost in his mid-20s, it's a different timeline between the two. So I wouldn't be ready to say, well, Bolduc is going to be more like a Josh Anderson.
I'm not saying he's going to be like, but that's not what I said. I'm saying that the fit with Suzuki and Cole is similar to the fit that Anderson had with them. I'm not saying that Zach Bolduc is going to be a player like Josh Anderson. I'm just saying that the fit is at this moment seems to be similar to that fit, which was not a good fit.
Not a fit.
No, that's it. And so, but the thing about the difference between Bolduc and Slavkovsky and what you just said is that, yes, that wasn't part of Slavkovsky's game, but it was a part of Bolduc's games. Like the things that he is expected to do on that line, BF1, collect pucks, win pucks down low. He doesn't even like playing below the goal line that much, which I guess is the one difference between him and Slavkovsky that's actually quite striking on that line. But the F1 thing, that's always been his calling card, to BF1 and win pucks and go retrieve pucks for his line mates and create himself. He's a gifted offensive player. He has an incredible shot. He can score goals. Like, it's not as if he can't do that, but he seems to be trying to find himself on this team right now. He never spends more than 3 games on the same line. His role changes. He's on power play 1. He's off power play 1. He's just never had a consistent run of games to do any one thing over and over again. And I'm curious as to like the way the team is right now. Like his best minutes have been with Doc, right? So when Doc comes back, maybe that's an option. We've talked about Doc maybe going and playing with Suzuki and Caulfield when he gets back. Like maybe Doc needs to be playing with Bolduc, because that's the best version of Bolduc we've seen this season was when he was playing with Doc. So I don't know, but it's an interesting subplot to this season, because it's easy to forget, but this is a very prized young acquisition that the Canadiens made, and he's not hiding it. It has not gone as well as he had hoped. It's not going as well as he had hoped, and I think there are reasons for that are attributable to him, and I think there are reasons for that are attributable to changing organizations and changing line mates and changing a coach, and there's a lot of change for a very young player. He's 22, and you're good to point that out. But this is something that needs to be kind of fixed. Like, I think it's because of the way the season has sort of gone, the ups and downs of it, the overall sort of big semi-crisis moments, and the Canadiens, sort of really desperation to get points. His development as a player, I think, is being not left behind, but it's not prioritized, right? The way it would have been 2 or 3 years ago, where Slavkovsky's development, for instance, was a huge priority when he arrived. It's not, doesn't seem to be a big priority for Zachary Bolduc, and it's a guy that I think he could be a really, really impactful, good player for this team in the future. And right now he's sort of swimming in a vacuum of inconsistency and frankly dissatisfaction with his own game.
Yeah, well, if that happens, being put on the top line with Suzuki and Caulfield might not be the best medicine then, but then again, if
unless he can figure it out, like he's being given an opportunity, right, to succeed. Yes. Like you can't say he's not being put in his position to succeed, but it's just like he's got to figure it out, and
Yeah.
he's got to make adjustments to his own game, and like he knows that. But last night, honestly, I didn't like. To me, the one thing, and I think I put it in a notebook one week, but like really the big thing with him is like Caulfield and Suzuki rely on Slafkovsky to be an outlet behind the net. Whenever things offensively are not going well, Slafkovsky tells them, just throw it behind the net. I will go get it, and I will move it on, either move it on to one of you guys, or I'll bring it to the front. Bolduc last night again, first period, Caulfield, I think it was Caulfield, it might have been Suzuki. Anyhow, one of them grabbed the puck, they rim it around the boards, it goes behind the net. Bolduc goes to get it, misses it, continues along. Penguins get possession, they're out of the zone. And this is where I say he needs to provide what Slafkovsky provides in that one specific area.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't have it, like he doesn't have the.
But that's not even the north-south game. It's
that's the
it's
instinct to know that. Yeah, it's board play, and it's also just knowing the tendencies of your line mates. It's a work in progress for him, and it's honestly like I just think he seems to have a good attitude about it. He's not shy to talk about it, and he's cognizant that it's not great what's going on right now. Seems determined to work on it and seems to own the fact that it's not great. He's not making excuses. He's not blaming anyone. He's blaming himself, and that's a good approach to take. But it's not all bad. I don't want to sound like his season's a disaster or anything, but it definitely could stand to improve. And frankly, if it does improve, it's going to really help this team improve as well. And maybe Doc's return will be a catalyst of that of some sort, and turn this team into a 3-line team.
Yeah, that would help a couple of guys. That if it turned into a 3-line offensive team. All right, we'll wrap this up for today. So thank you so much. You were in full form today. You were in good shape.
I like the morning podcast. I don't know. I was up late last night writing.
Yeah.
Fowler made it so that I couldn't. Even though I'm not in Pittsburgh, I had to write. So I wrote. I'll probably take a nap later. I don't know.
That's good. All right.
Yeah.
I'm off to work now. So take care, everybody. Thank you for listening to us. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday for another edition of the Basu Godin Notebook. Take care, everybody.